Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Sounds of Intent webinars for Music Hubs. I'm really excited this afternoon to talk to you about the Mugo, which is a new device and set of educational resources that we have been developing. And I'm really delighted that Gawain Hewitt could join us, who's our instrument developer, and has the Mugo, which you can see on screen, and is going to do a demo of it for us and talk about some of the features that we are adding to the second prototype. So there's no Adam this afternoon. So I'm going to present a little bit of background information on the Mugo and how we identified the need for such a device. And then, as I said, I'm going to pass over to Gawain. So I'm just going to run you through, as I said, a bit of the background research that identified the need for a music device that could convert movement into MIDI signals. We've called it the Mugo, and Mugo stands for Music Gesture Operated. So the seed of the idea for the Mugo came from a project, a research project that the Amber Trust commissioned the University of Roehampton to undertake, and it was a pretty extensive research project into the lives of children with something called Batten disease. Batten disease is a rare condition. As the slide says, it's 100 to 150 children and young people in the UK living with Batten disease, and it's actually it's a genetic mutation that disrupts the cell's ability to dispose of waste. So basically what happens is cell damage occurs over time, and that results in progressive neurological impairments. And those impairments are things like vision impairment, blindness, loss of speech and swallowing, cognitive decline, seizures, and eventual loss of mobility. So it's a really serious disease, and actually there's no current cure, or there have been some treatments with that have been able to support people as they go through that process. So it's an area where, because it's so rare, there hasn't been much in-depth research, and as I said, the Amber Trust commissioned alongside some other funders an in-depth investigation into the disease. And so what that piece of research identified is that music is actually incredibly important to young children and young people with Batten disease, particularly as they progress through the different stages of neurological decline. And so what you can see here is a slide that depicts different types of interests that the participants in the research engage with. And music is the blue bar, physical activity is the purple bar. And so what you can see is that obviously as children are younger with the disease, they have lots of physical activities that they take part in, and that declines as they get older. But things like music, you can see the blue bar steadily progresses in terms of how children engage with that activity, and actually becomes really important in the latter parts of the disease. So as you can see, at the age of 22, 78% of the participants were engaging in musical activities, and it's by far the most engaged with activity at that stage in people's lives. These are the 12 children and young people who were involved in the project, and it was a piece of case study research that measured children's musical development and also the impacts of the disease over successive time periods. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it because in a prelude to showing you something really interesting we found about music. So this is the Hamburg scale, which is a scale used to assess across five different domains, so vision, intellect, language, motor function, and epilepsy. And this helps assess where children with Batten disease are in the stage of their disease. And that will become relevant to the next slide. So what you can see is Within the research on the left-hand side, we looked at the mean or the average sounds of intent score across the different assessment points for all of the participants. What you can see is whilst there is some decline in musical development in the later assessment points, actually it holds up pretty consistently through all the assessment points. Whereas if you look on the right-hand side, what you see are the average scores from the Hamburg scale, and you can see how dramatic the decline is in terms of the combination of those 5 domains, so vision, intellect, language, and motor function. So as children and young people are seeing really progressive decline in some of their capabilities and functions, actually music holds up really strongly. And so one of the challenges that we started to try and address from the research is, given young people's desire to keep making music and the fact that their musical cognition remains intact, how do we give young people the ability to make music given their some of the neurological impairments that they're suffering from? So whether that's motor impairments or vision. And so that led us down a route really of thinking about gesture-driven musical devices or software that could deliver a sophisticated musical experience. And really that's the space in which, having looked at kind of what was on offer in the market, trying to find something that was easily accessible, affordable for families to access, and that could help people continue to develop their musical skills, or to be able to participate at the level at which their musical skills were present, was really challenging. And that's where the idea of the Mugo came from. I'm just going to share this short piece of video. And this is Luke, who was one of the participants in the original Batten disease project, and a very keen musician. And we were very lucky that Luke had some capacity to test the Mugo, and you can see Gawain on the film there as well. Gawain, was this the first prototype with stuck together with gaffer tape?
Yeah, it was. I think also I seem to recall Adam saying later that his heart sank when he saw me come with something held together with tape, and yeah.
Okay, so we can see kind of from the very first idea of this device, kind of what we were hoping to see. So let me just share this with you.
Let's make some music. Here we go. Nice. Really nice, Luke.
There we go. So let me stop sharing, and I can see that Gareth has his hand raised. Just before I go to you, Gareth, so I think the fact that Luke could participate in sort of joint music making with Adam, was really, really exciting for us. And it was great to actually, I know for Adam, to see something that he'd been thinking about for a really long time be able to be delivered, and that's kind of all credit to Gawain in terms of how he's executed the design of the Mugo. So before we pass over to Gawain, Gareth, did you have a question?
No, just a comment, Gawain. Please make all your instruments with gaffer tape, fishing wire, baked bean tins. For my soul, it's a beautiful thing. Gaffer tape has been a fascination of mine. I'm an autistic musician, and I love things that are not meant to be instruments So, you can't please Adam, but made my day.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Lovely.
you, Gareth. Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point, isn't it? Like, what is a finished instrument? What's it supposed to look like? What's it meant to be made of? And something, this is tangential, but I love tangents. It's been on my mind recently. I make a lot of things, and reusing stuff, of course, is the simplest way of recycling, isn't it? And there's so many things that can be reused straight away. So perhaps, yeah, I'll keep thinking on that. That's very encouraging. Thank you.
Well, I do percussion, and these plastic bottles. It's again taken from the fact of musicians I think in Nigeria playing these plastic bottles with beautiful timbre and texture. Like you say, if we don't start facing the environmental issue, no one else is going to, and music's a great way to do it.
I love that.
Thank you. So I'm going to hand over to Gawain, who's going to talk you through where we're at with the Mugo, how the gaffer tape version has evolved into the prototype we can see, and also kind of what's happening next.
Yeah, I should also show the new plan, shouldn't I, as well? Okay, well, it's so nice to be here, and with everyone who's on the call and everyone who's going to join us later to see what's going on. I've got it. This is where we ended up. So the actual gaffer taped one in the picture. This is the same one actually, but in a 3D printed box that exists really just to do the things we asked it to do. So there's no particular design here other than can we fit all the things on it. And I will show you in a minute the sort of where we're at with the design at the moment, but we've not done anything else. So just to show you around, this is just a normal battery tray. Some at the moment we're just using AA batteries, rechargeable ones, because it's one less problem to solve. But obviously one day this will be built-in rechargeable. There's a little on-off switch here. On the top we've got the actual buttons we use are these two knobs here and these knobs here, which only really makes sense once I get it plugged in. So let's I'm going to put it on a camera tripod. On the bottom it's got a holder for a camera tripod. I'm quite fond of camera tripods because they sell lots and lots of things that hold stuff in different angles for cameras. So at the top of my shelves next to me, for example, I've got some quite cool clamps. This is on a tripod at the moment. In fact, again, the same tripod that's in that video. There we go. So I'm going to just put it on, and you probably, hopefully, be able to see a little flicker of life on the screen there. This prototype doesn't have any sounds built in, so I'm going to use this iPad here, which was made in 2013. So this is an old and now cheap iPad, and this just has the venerable but fabulous piece of software, Thumb Jam. You can probably just about see that, and the Mugo will appear under the MIDI things as a MIDI device by Bluetooth. So I'm just going to connect that. There we go. So on this version that I'm demoing here, all the sounds are coming off Thumb Jam, but I will talk through the current plans in a minute. And simply, so you can play it just by moving. So I guess it's a little bit like when you reverse your car and it beeps. It's that kind of sensor, but instead of it telling you you're about to hit a brick wall, or I'm about to hit a brick wall, I'm sure you're all fabulous drivers, I'm about to hit the brick wall, this has been mapped instead to a scale. So these knobs, these gold ones, they're the minimum and maximum. This is how this version works. There's been some changes to this. So this is the minimum that it's sensitive, the maximum, and then we've got what scale we're in, how many notes. This is where it all gets a bit abstract. So if this is the beginning and that's the end over here, That's the beginning. How many divisions are in that? That's this middle one. And then the other one is what is the root note of the scale. So if you have a small space and many divisions, then you get a very sensitive instrument. If you have a big space and few divisions, then you get not a very sensitive instrument. And that's the two extremes and everything in between. Now, why do we have these knobs? The reason we have these knobs is to make it blind accessible. This is through the work we did with Luke and further conversations with Luke. So each one of these is a 12-way selector that allows you to go through just by feel. So you can just step through, as you can hear, the different scales or keys. And the idea was to make something that literally, if you're at, say, 3 o'clock, you would learn that you're in the key of E, for example. And there's no kind of speaking menu system or anything like that. It's just designed like that. I have to say I quite like it myself, having, now we've gone there, it makes it's quite an old-fashioned kind of interface, but it's quite nice. It's quite solid. You know where you are. I think that's probably it for the sort of a rapid demo of the Mugo itself. So you can select what key you're in, you can select how sensitive it is, so it could be sensitive enough for a very small movement like an eyelid, or a very fine movement through to a big gesture, and you can select what harmonic or tonal center you're in. So I guess probably the next thing to talk about is some of the, we've done considerable design work. I was going to say some of it, but actually what we've done since then this year is really an awful lot of work thinking about what the Mugo could be and what it's going to be. And we are, this is currently working on Mugo plays Mugo. This is our current sort of example of where we're at the moment, because we've actually done some extensive redesigning. And let's get the latest. I think this is the latest one. I've been trying to name them to keep them up to date. So as of the 12th of June, this is where we're at. And I'm going to just share the there we go. So can you see a picture of a Mugo thing? Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. So much affirmation there. That's very clear. Thank you very much. And here you go. So this is the idea. I guess it's probably important to say this is the idea of how it will work and maybe how it will look. But we're really thinking about functionality here. So at the top left, we've got a volume control. So that brings to mind a very important thing, which is built-in sound. So something that's conceptually very important to all of us in the team is that this is an instrument that anyone can take home or use in the classroom, and you don't have to be an expert. You don't need to, don't need to be able to think about Bluetooth, MIDI. You don't need to have an iPad. You don't need to understand thumb jam. It's very easy for someone like me to take for granted my level of comfort with music technology and normalization with that. But actually, I want this to be a device that you switch on and it makes a good sound, and it's musical straight away. You don't need anything else. It just works. So there will be a built-in speaker, built-in good quality sounds, sample based, and so for that we're going to need a volume control. So we've got a volume control up here in the top left. An on-off switch, obviously, a little switch which allows you to switch between internal sounds or the Bluetooth sounds, and also we may not need this, but external speaker, built-in speaker, that might just work on the jack itself. We'll see. We've got this idea for changing how we think about where the beam is. So rather than having a minimum and maximum, we're playing around with the idea of instead having a kind of where are we, and then once you so how far away is the center of the beam, and then how big is the zone. I'm wondering if that's clearer. I don't know the answer to that. I think the whole thing about the zone of playing is quite abstract, so it's trying to make that perhaps a bit more straightforward. And then we've got this divisions here. This is the number of divisions within that, playable areas within that space. We've got the built-in sounds, so there'll be 12 sounds. So because of this blind accessible interface, we are limited to 12s because we're using a 12-way switch, and I think the 12-way switch is good. I think the way it maps with the clock is useful in terms of sort of thinking about learning. I guess also pragmatically it's available as a thing we can use, and so there's 12 suggested sounds here: flute, horn, bassoon, organ, guitar, bass, vibraphone, marimba, Fender Rhodes, Latin percussion, African percussion, drum kit. I think this will change. I for one would like to see a harp on there, but we will see. In progress, that we're in conversation rather. And then we've got these controls I talked about before. So what scale are we in? So at the moment we've called that mode. Not sure if I like it being called mode, but it doesn't matter. We can change that at any time. What's our root note? So, if we're in a minor arpeggio, I see why it's in mode, because they're not all scales, are they? Okay, this is the design process live for you right now. So if we're doing a minor arpeggio, then that might be in G or in D sharp or whatever. And then what octave are we in? That would be a 6-way switch. Then there's this concept. So we're going to come on to this idea of backing tracks. So it's whether or not you're going to have backing tracks. That's important because the sounds change with the backing tracks. They will. There will be a screen for those of us that's accessible to, and then there's 12 backing tracks, and you can see here there's a whole matrix about how they link to the Sounds of Intent framework. So these have already been composed, and I've had a listen to them, and they're fabulous, frankly. And as you can see, it goes from ambient calm music number 1, which is exclusively for sound makers, through to things like And Now, which has 2 different bits of repertoire for the player that can either be done for a sound maker or a pattern maker, and then through to Flight of the Condor, which can be approached as a sound maker, a pattern maker, or a motive maker. But I think also what's quite nice is, and again, this is me thinking aloud, but I guess that would give the opportunity for ensemble work between people at different levels, which is quite nice on the same piece. And there's as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 that span across, 5 actually that span across all 3, including Olympic Harmony, which also includes music makers as well. And then you've got these kind of virtuosic pieces, the Well-Tempered Mugo and Pentatonia, which are fabulous and really quite sort of, just astonishing pieces of music, which are also, hard and challenging to play on the Mugo, as well as making sense of it as a interface and as an instrument. So yeah, that's the different backing tracks, and then we've got a balance between more backing track or more instrument. Playing, pause, stop, loop the backing track, rewind, forward wind, go back to the beginning, and then what level you're playing the tracks. There has been talk of some, I was going to say there's talk of additional features. That's been the story of the last 3 months, additional features. So there's always talk of additional features. But I think that's probably the basics of it all. And I think this is the real point of it's a great piece of tech. I'm really proud of it. We've demoed it again, and it's just working. That proves, I'm really pleased with that, and that's fabulous. But actually, I think the real point of difference is this really integrated thinking and educational situation with all the backing tracks, sounds, and educational framework that links with it all. I think that's everything. Sarah, have I forgot anything?
I don't think you've forgotten anything. That looks great. I think
Good stuff.
I think what's important to say is kind of where we're at in the project. So we've been really lucky to have some money from the University of Roehampton, where we have been developing this second prototype, and it been in this intensive design phase where we're integrating the Sounds of Intent music resources into the Mugo. And I think, as Gawain said, I think it's important that we see the Mugo as not just the device, but it's the device and the resources sort of brought together. And we think that meets the need that we'd identified in terms of having something that people can continue to use and develop their musical skills with, whilst being able to access music making in the first place. So the next step is the design or the development stage has taken us a bit longer because we've added a lot of things in and we weren't simply tweaking the prototype. So we're going to be out testing. We're starting to put together a testing schedule now for September and October. And I know there are people have registered their interest, and we continue to sort of capture settings that are interested in trying out the device. So do let us know if that applies to you. And we'll be sending devices out. We'll be coming into settings. We'll be videoing it in action, and we'll be taking feedback. And I think as well, Gawain, we haven't thought about this yet, but actually, even just this conversation, I think it would be good for us to maybe release something with the design and a questionnaire where we get people to just give us feedback around terminology and what's understandable in terms of thinking about how we name things for practitioners to access when they're working with children and young people that they're supporting. And then the next stage is to go into, once we've also just gained some more funding, which is exciting, that will get us through the testing and to a final spec that can then go into manufacturing. And we're also just in the process of applying for something called a knowledge transfer partnership. So it's the University of Roehampton working closely with the Amber Trust. So it'll be the Amber Trust who will bring the Mugo to market. And we're essentially transferring the knowledge from the university to the charity in order for them to launch a commercial arm and to bring this device for sale to different user groups. And our hope is we've had the green light to apply for that, which is quite an extensive process. And hopefully, if we're successful, that means we'll be starting production and commercialization at the beginning of 2026. So there's lots going on, and lots of ways for people to get involved. And what we really want to do is to get this in the hands of users as quickly as possible, so that we can make sure that it starts creating the benefit that we have been aiming for a really long time, and also that we get some really decent feedback for the design process.